Welcome, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I would like to advise everyone that the meeting is being webcast on the State Technology website as well as being taped. My name is Loretta Fine. I'm the Deputy Director at the Public Safety Communications Division. Karen Wong, our Director, is not here today as she has been ill for the past couple of days. If you would like to make a public comment, please make sure you've signed in at the registration table for the public comment. I would now like to proceed with roll call. Sheriff Everett Bonner. Here. Chief Reginald Chappelle. Oh, could you turn your mics on, please? Thank you.
Chief Scott Silsby for Reggie Chappelle.
Lisa Hoffman.
Present.
Chief Sam Spiegel.
Present.
Chip Yarborough. Absent. Chief Peter Bryan. Absent. Chris Henshaw.
Charlie Cullen representing Chris Henshaw.
Chief Robert Nicolini. Here. And Leslie Wilson.
Here.
We'll now move to the first order of business, which is the approval of the December 2011 meeting minutes. You'll find a copy in the meeting minutes in your handouts. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I'll move the minutes.
Okay. Do I have a second to approve the minutes?
Second.
The minutes are approved as written. Thank you. The next order of business was a presentation from the California Technology Agency Information Security Officer, Mr. Keith Tresh. Unfortunately, Keith will not be presenting today, so he will be scheduled for the next 911 Advisory Board meeting in June. The next item will be unfinished business, and I have the first couple of items on that. Regarding the State 911 Advisory Board meeting locations versus Northern and Southern California, the budgetary issues have not changed. The advisory board meetings will remain in Sacramento at this point in time. Also, incorporating topics into the California 911 division updates, specific 911 division updates will be incorporated into the 911 division updates. For example, pilot projects, wireless deployment, etc. Ryan Doolin will now provide an update or provide the California 911 division updates.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Ryan Doolin, the Deputy Director for the California 911 Communications Office. Next is a series of updates on items of interest to the board and on activities of the California 911 Division. A tracking document labeled Handout Number 2 is provided in your packet. The handout captures all the requests as a result of the State 911 Advisory Board meetings, and the format was changed to make it easier to track compared to the Excel spreadsheet that we used previously. The first item of business is I met with Cal EMA on the PSCO outage notification proposal on December 12th last year. The discussion centered around process and roles and responsibilities of the two agencies with respect to outage notification. The division plans on working with the State Warning Center to flesh out some of their issues and bring those changes back to you at all future board meetings. We see this as a very positive move towards a lingering issue that's been out there for about a year and a half. On another side note, the FCC issued a notice on February 15th extending network outages, reporting requirements to interconnected voice over IP service providers. So we wanted to make the board aware of that now outages are being extended to voice over IP. So we see that as a good progress so that we can get a handle on all of our outages that the board has had an interest in. The California 911 Division continues to work on the regulatory considerations for the California 911 Strategic Plan, the rough order of magnitude cost estimate, and the CETNA analysis that we reported on at the last board meeting. All these topics are very complex and require a lot of research from the office and staff time. Again, we will share the outcome of all of this work, and we'll bring that to the board once it's been completed. The division has completed all the revisions to the County Coordinator Task Force Charter that you guys voted on in the December meeting. We will be soliciting the community to have these positions filled over the next several months. The Long Range Planning Committee has reviewed those documents and will have a report update in their report out to you after later in the agenda. And lastly, from the general updates, the master purchase agreement for the 911 system and services was awarded to 9 contractors on February 1st of this year, and we've posted all that information as well as the user guide instructions to our website so PSAPs can understand how to purchase the 911 system and services on that contract. Any questions on those? Okay, moving on to the project status updates. The routing on an empirical data project was completed on schedule at the end of December 2011. I'm proud to report a dramatic decrease of busies from 42% in 2007 to about 2% as an outcome of all the work that went into this effort. So we are really proud to report that the RED project is completed. They will be deploying additional sectors over the next 3 months just to finish up deployment, and we'll be following those status as they deploy the sectors on those PSAPs that were engaged in that project. ECAT's project has completed the historical data conversion to the new system. The California 911 Division is working with the PSAP managers and county coordinators on a few technical issues that have been reported to our office, and the division is also working with our vendor on the 10-digit summary report feature requested by the PSAP community, which is a big request that's out there from the PSAPs. So we are going to be working on that. I expect it to go into user acceptance testing probably within the next month or two. An update on the next generation pilot projects. We have 5 statewide. The E911 grant project in the northeast part of California has successfully demonstrated proof of concept testing for XY, which is longitude and latitude location-based routing, in mid-January with the first 7 PSAPs that went on that trial. Imperial County was deployed September 2011 of last year and is on their 6th month of implementation in a production environment. They still have a few issues to work through AT&T, and we are tracking and working with the PSAP closely in that area. We're waiting on PSAP approvals for the Pasadena Ring project to begin implementation, so we see that coming down the pipeline pretty soon to get that project off the ground and implemented. Ventura County has started the ordering process and will begin implementation in the next month or so. And the last project is Mendocino County has reviewed the responses from the RFI that was solicited at the end of last year. And the next step is to conduct vendor demonstrations, and then they'll be sharing those outcomes with the state on moving forward on implementation. Those are the 5 approved pilot projects that the state office is undergoing right now for next gen. Any questions on those areas?
Ryan, Lisa Hoffman, I have a question. On the ECATS project, do you have a report on what some of the problems were that they were experiencing from the PSAPs?
We don't have a report, but I'd be happy to bring back to the advisory board at the next meeting a list of those items that we are tracking. I can definitely provide that to the board.
Okay, thank you. I think it would be good information to get out to the PSAPs so that they could be looking for that if they were having problems. I haven't had any problems, so.
Yeah, and also if the PSAPs are having problems, we have Wes Nita and his group, so they should be reporting those to their 911 consultant, and we'll be adding that to the tracking list. So it's really important if PSAPs are experiencing issues for them to reach out and let us know what those are. So that concludes my updates. Any other questions on those, on the projects or anything? And I know last board meeting, Chief Spiegel did bring up the criteria or guidelines surrounding next generation 911 pilot projects. The Long Range Planning Committee will be updating. That was a conversation that we had yesterday. I think it's a good idea that we establish some criteria or guidelines on what projects get accepted. So Chris Herron will be giving an update from the Long Range Planning Committee on that. Okay. Thank you.
The next order of business is the Long Range Planning Committee update provided by Chris Herron. And if you could please refer to your handouts 3 and 4 in your package.
Good morning. My name is Chris Herron. I'm the Dispatch Services Manager excuse me, at the Placer County Sheriff's Office, and I've represented Sheriff Bonner on the Long Range Planning Committee at the last few meetings, including yesterday's meeting. Today I'm before you on behalf of Chief Peter Bryan, who's unable to be here due to illness. We have several items to report to the board on, and 3 items we'll ask for a vote, and so I'll do those at the end. I wanted to let you know that the Long Range Planning Committee has created a strategic plan and roadmap status update list. You do not have that document before you today. It's a document that is in an early draft form, but it will allow the 911 office and the Long Range Planning Committee to easily track and update the progress of the strategic plan and the Next Gen 911 roadmap. Once finalized, we envision that document will be kept updated and included in your regular handouts at regularly scheduled meetings. Second is a document that the Long Range Planning Committee created called the Next Gen 911 Stakeholders and Focus Group Proposal. You do have that document in your packet, and because we met yesterday, the document has also been made available to the public today. This document was requested by the 911 office to help identify those with an interest in the Next Gen 911 progress. It's also a first draft and will be further updated, and we'd ask that if anyone on the board has suggestions that they route those through the Highway Patrol. And Michelle Bland has been the representative on that committee, so I'll defer to Chief Silsby. Would you like those to continue to go to Michelle?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So if anyone on the board has recommendations for that list, if you'll please send those to Michelle Bland with the CHP. Or you could certainly send them through Ryan, and he can forward them out to the committee. The 911 office's Next Gen 911 presentation was reviewed by the Long Range Planning Committee. We've asked the 911 office to update the information and stats contained in that presentation, and they're going to provide that to us at our next meeting, at the next LRPC meeting. The committee members will then reach out to our constituents for feedback on the presentation. And our plan going forward is for the committee members to be the first group of those authorized, if you will, to make the presentation on behalf of the 911 office. The goal is to eventually have additional representatives, potentially other board members, designees, or county coordinators trained to give that presentation. And our goal there is to have that presented to the stakeholders on the list in that previous handout that we just spoke about. The Long Range Planning Committee is also working on creating and maintaining a list of 911 grant opportunities. That document we expect to put together after the 911 Goes to Washington event next week. The Long Range Planning Committee will also be exploring ways for local agencies to keep the 911 office aware of grants they may be receiving as it relates to 911 services. As Ryan mentioned, the board at your December meeting recommended changes to the County Coordinator Task Force Charter and Supplement, and did vote to approve the documents with those changes. The Long Range Planning Committee reviewed the updated documents, and that is handout number 4 in your packet today. They do incorporate the requested changes, and the committee recommended that the 911 office begin recruitment as soon as possible. Any questions on those items before we get to the items where we are requesting that you vote? So 3 items for you today where we've determined we do need your authorization. The first is handout number 3 in your packet. That's the Long Range Planning Committee membership list. We've asked the 911 office to research whether there's a Long Range Planning Committee charter, and if that does exist, to provide it to us. If it does not, then the committee would like to put one together and then come back to the board with recommendations for additional members, whether that be additional board members, designees, or non-board members such as county coordinators. What we are asking for you today, though, is the committee recommends Chief Peter Bryan be voted in as the chairperson of the Long Range Planning Committee.
Do I have that as a motion?
Yes, so if there's someone willing to make that motion on behalf.
Do I have a second?
Discussion, if we can. I think your proposed charter said that the chair for the county coordinators may be mixing the two up. We're going back and forth between county coordinators and long range.
Right.
Talking about Peter being the chair of the long range.
Correct. Sorry.
Withdrawn. My apologies.
Yes, so on the Long Range Planning Committee, we'd like to, at this point, have Peter Bryan be recognized as the chairperson of that committee, and then we would come back to the board at the next meeting with future recommendations regarding the makeup of the committee and the addition of members.
I'll make a motion to elect Chief Peter Bryant as the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee.
And I'll second the motion. Lisa Hoffman.
Okay, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item where we're requesting authorization from the board is on the CETNA report that Ryan spoke about. As he mentioned, that report is not yet available, but it's anticipated that it will become available before the next board meeting. So we'd like the board's authorization for the Long Range Planning Committee to review that report once it's issued by the 911 office. And then we will come to the board at the next meeting with recommendations based on that report.
Discussion?
I'm sorry, do we need to have a motion? Or is it just a,
Yes, the
Would you like
911
to discuss,
office.
or we could move to motion if you, but would you like to discuss it? Okay, then,
we have the motion first, then discussion, or something like that? My
Okay.
orders may be out of order.
okay,
I'll make the motion.
okay,
Thank you.
I'll second it, and then we discuss?
okay.
Okay.
I think the question that we have, both you and I have, is that something that really needs to be approved in advance to do it? And if so, certainly, I think that the Long Range Planning Committee is a great opportunity to vet that out.
Okay, Ryan, you got a comment?
I just have a comment. The 911 office is asking, because this is a new item that hasn't been reviewed by the Long Range Planning Committee, that the board actually vote that they are in agreement that the Long Range Planning Committee review the report once it's issued by the office, and then they will return to the board for a vote on any recommendation that comes out of that. Right now, it is not on the planning criteria for the Long Range Planning Committee, so that's why we're asking for a vote that they actually be assigned to review the CETNA analysis and then come back to you for review. If you want the board to do anything else, then that would be a discussion or that you guys would have to have. But right now, the Long Range Planning Committee is asking that they be the body that review the analysis and then come back to you guys at the next meeting.
And I think that's in keeping with what we had asked for the board in establishing parameters for long-range planning, so the board wasn't carrying all of the water.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
I think that's the idea, is we would come forward to the board with a discussion of what the deficit is with CETNA funding and what the liabilities are going forward for both funding equipment and other projects that are funded by CETNA. So we would have that. We would do the research for the board, come forward and provide you with the pros and cons and what we think a sustainable number is going forward to supply the 911 services that CETNA funding provides.
Okay, so just for clarity, would you mind restating the motion?
Sure. We're requesting authorization from the board for the Long Range Planning Committee to review the CETNA report once it's issued by the 911 office and then come to this body at the next meeting with recommendations.
I'll move the motion.
Hoffman, I'll second it.
Board will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. And the final item for you today, and also requesting authorization, is the Next Gen 911 funding guidelines. As Ryan mentioned and this body discussed at the last meeting, we want to provide the 911 office with some guidelines to help them evaluate and prioritize future Next Gen 911 funding requests by PSAPs beyond the current 5 pilot projects that the 911 office has already provided updates on. So essentially, that's the request for the board to authorize the Long Range Planning Committee to create those guidelines on behalf of the board for the 911 office. I think our preference would be that we're able to implement those before the next board meeting, but certainly your pleasure.
Motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Discussion. I'm a little uncomfortable with that, and not.
No, I
Not,
thought there
not,
might
not
be
on
discussion.
the, not on the grounds of, that we don't have qualified people on long range, but the parameters and criteria for Next Gen is probably one of the biggest responsibilities this body has moving forward as it relates to the service delivery. Alternative ways that we can go about a review of that. I don't know how that will be. Then that one out. But we need to. I think that it begs the input of us to be able to reach out to some of our people. Those things, because what's going to follow if we frame the architecture, we frame specifics of this. Our agencies are our constituent agencies, grants and those types of things to do, and we're going to have people before this body saying, well, we don't agree with the office's guidelines here. Why didn't somebody think of this? As much as I understand the desire to get it done in the time frame, certainly an alternative is up the next one meeting for that very purpose, for dialogue of that, if it can be alternative.
Hoffman, I think a lot of the problem is that we waited a long time for the new contract, the MPA, to come out. So it's out. A lot of us are in maintenance. And I think a lot of agencies are holding off on upgrading their CPE because there really isn't anything that's defined. And so, yeah, I do agree that it needs to be really thoroughly vetted. There's already a lot of good information out there from APCO, from NENA, what they believe the standard should look like, but of course the nation hasn't decided even what the standard is for regular 911, so there certainly isn't a standard for Next Gen. I do agree that we need to vet it. I would like to see something started, though, so that we can get the process rolling, not necessarily have it a be-all, end-all, but at least a process to start.
I tend to agree with the chief. I think that it's important to get this vetted through a community of people that are going to be the end users and are so engaged. But I'm a little reluctant to abdicate, this body's authority and have it implemented without coming back to us. I guess that's my concern.
I'd also add to it just further consideration is that the parameters of what we do also is going to help drive technology. It's also going to dictate service delivery and budgetary issues too. So parameters are, and agency implements a new design that mandates, for example, capable of receiving text or video into your this amount of demand. Forward with that design, put it into your center, now you've got additional staffing, training, additional cost issues that have to be considered. Structure and how this is, the framework is presented and adopted, I think, will be as technological parameters too.
And Chief, I think you make a very good point there. We don't want to put mandates on the PSAPs or restrict any future innovation that may be coming up in terms of next generation. Maybe a better way to put this is that the Long Range Planning Commission will make some recommendations on broader guidelines for grant funding. So I think, for example, something that's in line with what the 911 office is doing, make sure we're not duplicating efforts. If we're spending money on projects that are exactly the same or identical, that's kind of a waste of money. Maybe some broader guidelines, not restrictions or mandates. But I think you're right. This is probably the body to ultimately make some of those decisions and not it be created in a much smaller committee.
So with that feed, do you want me to modify that for you?
So would you like to withdraw your motion since after the
Sure.
discussion?
Well, and I don't know that I can make a motion, but I'll
withdraw
ask.
your request?
I'll ask for. Let me just modify the request from the committee. Okay. So the Long Range Planning Committee would request the board authorization to create draft guidelines for the 911 office. Again, that would be to help evaluate and prioritize future next-gen 911 funding requests by PSAPs beyond the current 5 pilot projects, and we'll bring that to the board at the next regularly scheduled meeting with recommendations for moving forward. I think similar to the last vote, this is just something that has not been on our agenda in the past, so we're asking for the board's vote to put it on the agenda for us.
So to help keep us in Robert's Rules of Order here, I'm going to try and straighten this out. I'm going to offer an alternative motion, if the motion maker will agree to withdraw, that we proceed with the recommendation as just stated, and to task the 911 office to evaluate, if need be, an earlier meeting, meet the concerns that Lisa has articulated there. If we need to get something approved earlier than the next scheduled meeting, let's schedule one earlier. That is my motion. And before I can get a second, I got to get a withdrawal of the prior motion.
I'll withdraw the prior motion.
The alternative motion has been submitted on your behalf. I've made a motion. There needs to be a second.
I'll second it, Hoffman.
I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't have anything further from the Long Range Planning Committee report. If there's any questions?
I just thank the committee for all their work. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We do feel like there's been good progress at the last couple of meetings, so thank you for your support as well.
Thank you very much, Chris. Okay, the next item regarding unfinished business is the state emergency telephone number account. Please refer to your handout number 5 for the preliminary fund condition statement. We'll now move to the next order of business, which is the NENA 2012 conference reimbursement. A letter was sent from the 911 Division Office to all 911 county coordinators on 3/9/12 approving the use of the county annual allotment. Next item under new business is discussion of PSAPs taking wireless 911 calls. I'd like you to please refer to your handout number 6 in your package. And Ryan, you've got comments to add?
Just a couple of comments on those. The board asked us at the last advisory board meeting in December to create a list of those PSAPs not currently accepting their wireless 911 calls. So handout number 6 identifies those 20 PSAPs statewide that are currently, we don't have a letter of agency submitted. Or at the bottom of that same list, those that have submitted a letter of agency but have not deployed or have withdrawn their request. Now that the RED project has completed by the end of December 2012, we're asking the board to reach out to their constituents out of the 20 PSAPs and have a discussion about their acceptance of the wireless 911 calls and to get a better idea of the issues that surround those, or if there's anything else the California 911 office can provide them from a data perspective to help them make a decision one way or the other. And then I think we would like to compile that information, bring it back to the board, and then look for your advice on how do we get the other 20 folks to deploy wireless so we have statewide deployment across California. Any questions?
Ryan, I have a question.
Yep.
Do the 911 office and if the representatives of the office that deal directly with the PSAPs, have they reached out to these PSAPs and presented them with RED project information specifically so they understand that they can define the areas that really are specifically theirs?
Yes, we've done that, as well as I have actually made personal trips to some of these, not all of them, but with state travel restrictions, I haven't had a face-to-face meeting. I think we're at that point. We have reached out continuously to try to get folks to deploy wireless and also provided data from the RED project as to what sectors would work. I believe also CHP has done an effort from their organization in reaching out to provide data. So we're at a point where I think it's now a face-to-face, maybe to get an idea if there's more specific things that they don't want to share with the 911 office at this time on a case-by-case basis so that we can address those. I know there's, what I've been told is there's issues with, is there an increased call volume? But we're willing, just like Riverside, they just actually accepted their letter of agency, so we're very proud of that. That took a face-to-face meeting between myself and the sheriff down there. And once we presented the information and that we made the commitment that if any increase in call volume happens, we would reassess the funding stream and we would provide the funding based on the new call volume. So we did make that commitment, and they're currently deploying, I believe as of 2 months ago, they're moving forward with that. So it's hard for me to get out to all 20 of these folks, so I'm asking for some help from the board to do that same thing. I think once we start supplying the data and having a face-to-face meeting, we can probably address most of these issues. There may be one or two, and then we might just have to deal with those. But the remaining 20, I'd like to ask the board for some help in that face-to-face meeting. That answer your question? I think it's really, now that we deployed LA in December, so we have all of the data, and I believe that the CHP is very committed to working with each of these areas, just to have the discussion on, sitting down and seeing what cell sectors we can get deployed or not.
Ryan, a quick question. Has there been any consideration of approaching CSU administration? It looks like 6 of those PSAPs are at CSU locations, and certainly, college students, there is no payphone in the dorm anymore. Every college student has a payphone, and you would think if anybody or if any entity would be taking wireless calls, it would be CSU, and maybe that's something that could be addressed through the CSU administration or on a more of a global effort.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is go from a bottom to top approach. So I think giving the police chief at those areas that manage the PSAP the first opportunity to handle it before we go to like a board of regents or the administration, I think would be a fair approach. And then that way it gives the chief that kind of oversees the resources and stuff the first opportunity to address it. And then if we're not able to handle at that level, I can see us going to the administration. But it seems like the first approach would be to kind of reach out to the police chief that's responsible in that PSAP.
And I'd be happy to talk to CSU San Jose.
Okay.
And Ryan, I'll be happy to help with some of these Southern California agencies.
Actually, they've made a verbal, I did visit Oakland, they made a verbal commitment, but I think they wanted to see the RED project completed. I think they're the next one to deploy. So I think they're sitting on the fence. So I'm looking forward to having Oakland deploy.
Further discussion?
And I think it we'd be remiss if we didn't comment, at least for those of us that have been through the transition. There is, from a practical experience, Red Project wasn't in place when I made my transition, my agency, and there is an increase. There's a decrease certainly in seven-digit calls that come into the comm center, but there certainly is an increase. And the challenge, and primarily for the purposes of the public record, is that the board here fully recognizes that there could and probably will be budgetary implications to the agencies in taking this on, that while additional funding from the state is offered, as you did with Riverside, that funding goes to the number of answering points in there and does not provide long-term funding, any funding for staffing. And I know, having had this discussion with the Sacramento Police Chief, this is him, especially in light of 120 police officer positions. I think those are real significant budgetary challenges that everybody's looking at. Not to make it a higher priority case, but I would think with the campus violence and the types of things that are occurring on campuses, that it'd be a much easier sell on the campuses for their enhancing their communication capabilities. Case, but you know, for the record, an acknowledgement that we do understand that there is budgetary impacts to this. But he probably but CHP for the first time.
Thank you.
They've taken the hit, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to offload a lot of the calls that they're taking now that have nothing to do with CHP's business. Thank you.
I think that those are good comments. And we're not saying that we just are going to force deployment. We really want to understand the specific issues so that we can work as a team and the board can work to understand. I think a lot of it has been, we think it might be that it might be budget, we think it might be increased call volume, or any other issues that pertain to that region. But like I said, when we went down to Riverside, the sheriff was very articulate in outlining the specific issues. It wasn't an easy thing, but we sat down and worked through each one of them and tried to address them. And so we'd like to do that with the remaining 20 to try to just increase our deployment for wireless. So the commitment from my office is to work through those issues. I just need help to identify what the issues are in the last remaining 20. That's what I'm asking the board for help on.
I'll assist you with both of the Sacramento agencies.
Okay.
And Ryan, I will reach out to East Bay Regional Parks. I know the chief, so.
Okay, so you have the list. If you guys, I can follow up with a contact with each of you, and we can kind of assign these out outside of the forum, and then hopefully we can come back at a later or future board meeting and get an update on that.
Just as a recommendation, I'd like to see it as a standing report until we are 100% assumed it should be a standing report for the meeting.
So if that's a motion, you guys would have to second and vote on that.
Ryan, a question for you on the three agencies that have submitted a letter but not deployed. What does that exactly mean?
So they've submitted that they're committed to deploying wireless, but either during deployment or sector selection or the changing of personnel has impacted that commitment. So in the case of I know for the Sacramento City, there was budget issues that came up during budget hearings or process that the city went through. They also had a change of the captain that's over the comm center. So those all impacted the ability to deploy wireless. So they submitted initially thinking they could, and it could also be for recruitment purposes. They might have less dispatchers than when they first submitted their letter of agency. So they've withdrawn that commitment.
So these three have withdrawn.
Right, they've withdrawn.
Okay, they're not just pending.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Well, actually, they have not withdrawn formally. We just have had a informal
The
discussion with them.
conversations you have, is that
Correct.
their intent is to withdraw?
That's right.
Okay.
Ryan, I have one more question. I'm not trying to question your work, but are you sure the list is accurate? Because in San Francisco, really, we have 4 PSAPs. There's only 1 PSAP that's taking wireless, though, and the other 3 are not on this list. So I'm just concerned that it may not be as, I mean, they're very small PSAPs, and they really don't increase our volume at all, but we take all of their wireless.
So if they, I believe the list is accurate. If not, I can definitely double check that. If you know of some area that's not on the list, if you can let us know. If they submitted their letter of agency and they've deployed either one sector, they would not be on the list because we see them as progressing towards deploying wireless. Or if they've even just submitted their letter of agency and they told us that they intend to take their wireless but they haven't implemented, they would not be on this list.
Okay,
These are
'cause-
only folks that have not submitted their letter of agency, which is the commitment, or they've submitted their letter of agency and they've told us that for various reasons they're not going to deploy. So I know that the list is accurate as far as not taking their wireless, but I'm not, the list will not include folks that told us that they intend to but have not deployed yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I know one of the PSAPs, they can't even they can't take anything because their equipment was so old, and they are upgrading now. So
Right.
they're in the process of upgrading, but the other 2, I mean, it doesn't really, I mean, it's nothing to us. It's like 1/100 of 1% of our volume, so it's not like it's any big impact. But I just didn't see them on the list, and I wasn't sure whether or not I needed to reach out to them.
So our next exercise is to actually work with my technical team and those that have actually submitted their letter of agency. I want to know where their status is on the deployment of wireless. So if they've, have a number of cell sectors that they've agreed to with CHP to move over, where are they at in that deployment? Are they 60% done, 80% done, or they haven't even started yet? So that's the next exercise, but I wanted to at least address the ones that have not even made the commitment.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on that?
Board want to make a recommendation? Regarding
Yeah, I
the
think,
standing report?
there was a motion that it be a standing report, so if you can second and vote on that, that'd be great.
Second the motion.
Call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Thank you, Ryan. The next item on the agenda is agenda items for future meetings. We currently have the Warren Act review, which is pending. The CPUC presentation is pending. So does the board have any other additional items you would like to add for future meetings?
I have a question, I'm sorry. There were a couple items that were the state emergency telephone number account, it's a handout, but there was no discussion on it. Is that going to be for future, are you just pushing that out to the next meeting?
If you'd like to add it for discussion for a future, we can do that.
I was just curious because it's on here, it has Karen's name on it. I wasn't sure if it was just going to be a handout or if she was going to be presenting some materials or some information.
Okay? It was
Yeah,
for.
could I give
Go
an
ahead,
update on
Ryan.
that? So Chief Chappelle at the last advisory board meeting asked for a standing agenda item on the Setna account and asked that we provide a preliminary fund condition statement at every board meeting moving forward. So the board did vote on that, and we made a commitment to provide that information to you on an ongoing basis. It is a handout. Unless the board has a discussion on those items, we plan on giving you an updated fund condition statement at every board meeting moving forward.
So it's just going to be a handout, it's not going to be a discussion item?
You can have a discussion item if you review and want to discuss that. The office right now is doing a Setna review, and that's what the Long-Range Planning Committee will review and make recommendations. If you have anything outside of that, then it would be just a board discussion item. It will be a standing item from now on.
All right, thank you.
And that'll provide the opportunity to discuss funding going forward after we analyze the report that you're coming out with, because obviously that's a critical consideration for this committee. It looks like we're losing somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million a year, and eventually that fund will be exhausted, and we will not be able to provide the services or equipment that the state office does now. So that really should be one of the higher priorities for this committee, to take a look at how we can make that a sustainable fund.
Yeah, and it was just, Chief Chappelle wanted just transparency into this. So we had not provided it before. We had just give you an update. So it was now a standing item to give you visibility into the budget for the 911 SETNA account. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
I do have an item that I wanted to get on for future discussion, and that is, I don't know how to frame it other than to say impacting technologies on PSAPs. My attention was drawn to it recently. There's a new television commercial advertising a company called, I believe it's 5 Star, which is basically a I've fallen and can't get up button that has GPS. If you hit it once, it goes to their call center. But if you hold it in, it's supposed to connect you to the closest 911 center. This is yet another device that does not fall within the SETNA funding model. So in placing this in asking that it be placed on the next agenda, I'm hoping that we can get something back from the 911 office that advises the board on what we can do collectively. Obviously, it's going to have to be addressed at a federal level, but we need to know what and who that is so that we can at least, as a good representative group across the state, contact our legislative leaders at a federal level and get this on their radar screen. Because with an aging population, I anticipate seeing many more of these. We had the presentation when we were doing the hearings up and down the state by OnStar with their new very nice device for that anybody can put on their rearview mirror and now have OnStar in their cars. None of those are collecting any type of fees, yet every one of these will impact the operating costs of the important to raise that level of concern federally, and to see if we can get something enacted at a federal level that at the very least gives us the authority in the state to set something. You know that there is a challenge with this because a lot of the companies are out of state, and regulating an out-of-state company from in-state. I'm hopeful that first to raise this, that it's some of the other state 911 offices. But we've got to move the ball forward if we're going to solve it. I'd like to see it on the next agenda with hopefully whatever the office can bring back.
And I completely concur with Chief Spiegel. I think that not only from a funding perspective, but also from an operational perspective, every week there's another company out there that has a proposal that uses a 911 network, and none of these have been vetted in any manner, and in fact can actually overwhelm the 911 system if they don't work correctly, and that's happened with auto dial devices in vehicles. And literally every week I get a call from a company that has another product out there that uses 911, and I think that absolutely there'll have to be standards at some level, whether it's at the state or federal level, that regulates what can be on the 911 network. Some of these applications are very good and are useful to the public, but some of them really are not, and actually interfere with the ability for PSAPs to do what they need to do, or take a great deal of time away from the dispatchers when they should be answering other calls. So absolutely, this should be an ongoing item.
Brian, any comment?
Yeah, actually, it is a challenge for our office, so I would agree with Chief Spiegel. We had the technical working group, so we did find it challenging because there was multiple advisory board members on that technical advisory committee. or technical work group, I can't remember the official name. I think they did some good work with a device that was like that for Alzheimer's patients, and we were able to construct an issue paper, and I thought we worked through it really well. With the change of the Bagley-King rules in January of this year, that technical work group was put on hold because of all the public meeting notices, notifications. So if you, I just wanted to advise you, if you want to reestablish that group, we're going to need to work through some of the issues as far as Bagley-King, or we're going to have to do a lot of posting, public notice, bring the teams together. So I think we need to, as a group, work through those things now that the rules had changed of January of this year. Because that technical advisory committee, with all of the applications and devices coming down, I think that they're going to have to meet quite regularly if you want a little subgroup to take on these issues outside of the board. So just keep that in mind when we put this on next meeting for June. I'd like to see you guys talk about how we can maybe approach that, or if you need something specific from the 911 office, let us know so we can be prepared to bring that.
Leslie, sorry. This is something that I thought we talked about at the long-range planning committee, to have a subcommittee or a technical working group out of that long-range planning committee with some of the 911 coordinators, and have that assigned through that group with technical experts that they can reach out to.
But if we did something like that, I think that would help us, because then we can public notice all at the same time. If we coordinated at that same venue, I think that would help us a lot from an administrative support aspect.
Right. I'm supportive of what you're trying to do as far as the long-range technology side is. Right. But as it relates to my request is that I'm not looking for the office to identify which devices. I'm looking for input from the office of what the office's assessment is, whether we go to PUC or we're going to federally, which I'm going to assume that's where we end up. But to understand what it is we need to do and what has been done. While not an attorney, I think I could craft language that would be encompassing enough to basically say, if you create a device that somehow touches the 911 system, you're going to pay 911 fees.
Okay.
Somehow, if there's an impact that's not as artful as it would be, but I think that would be the intent, that it help shoulder the load of the impact created by the technology, and hopefully federally, once that's put in place.
Okay. So I think what we could do is, like you said, add it to the next agenda item and have a discussion around that. But I just wanted to give you guys a couple of items to think about in that discussion. I think it would be a very worthwhile discussion.
And I think the thing that I'd be interested in, I think, to piggyback on what Sam is talking about, is it's a staff request for an estimation on, what damage will this do to 911? And that's nothing that we need to all put our heads together and go, well, here's the device, here's the device, here's the device. I think that what we're looking for is sort of staff work that would say, this does it in fact pose a risk to ongoing funding and therefore ongoing operation of 911? And what are those risks? How does that happen? And then, so I think that what I hear Sam say is it's not a long-range planning issue, not right now. It's more of, what do you see as a staff member for this agency that's out there that poses a risk, an unfunded mandate, if you will, and then we could come back with, conceptually, we know there's an issue looming. You know it and I know it.
Yep.
If we had that sort of staff report on what the potential impacts are to the state of California and 911 operations, then I think that we could, take it into a committee setting or whatever we need to advance the ball legislatively. But, this is obviously a huge issue. We all know it. And I would hate to see us get bogged down in trying to form a subcommittee of a subcommittee to identify this, that, or I think that we need that big picture first, and I think that can be done at the staff level to come back and go, yeah, just what we thought. Here it is. This is the potential impact, and go from there. So I don't think that the request is specific about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, that it's not this device, that device, and how they add up. It's just, I think that we need that fundamental foundation that there's an issue, it's coming, it's huge, and it's going to hurt the people of California if unchanged.
Okay.
Situation analysis and recommendation.
Okay. Sounds good.
And I would agree with that, but I also think it's important to keep that technical working group together because there's various impacts, and we don't even know what they are. And again, I think that we need to include the legislative piece of what's out there, what's being proposed in legislation. Maybe the long-range planning committee can look at those things, because I know that for the California Fire Chiefs in AB 1387, there was some language, hopefully that will get in, regarding these third-party vendors and delaying responses, and those calls being transferred and when they're transferred to the PSAP or secondary PSAP. And we all need to be aware of those and working with the office and have those on our radar so that we can be involved in that language that gets incorporated. But at the same level, the PSAPs need to know what they're dealing with and what's out there. So I think they're both important.
Okay, thank you. So we'll add it to the advisory board to have a discussion and have action items come out of that, and then present the data back to the board for a vote and recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Board have any additional items they would like to add for future meetings? The next order of business will be announcements. And I do have an announcement, and that is that the governor's proposed 2012-2013 budget was released on January 5th, 2012. The proposed budget includes for consideration the elimination and consolidation of several state boards and commissions, which includes the State 911 Advisory Board. Karen Wong sent an email to all State 911 Advisory Board members on that same evening providing this information. Does any other board member have an announcement? All right, then the next order of business will be the public comments. Do we have any public comments? It appears we have one. Joy Willis? Push the button.
Does the green light mean it's on?
There you go.
Okay. I'm trainable, I am. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members, other members of Public Safety Committee, and public attendees. My name is Joy Willis. I'm the director of SHASCOM 911, which is a consolidated 911 center in Shasta County. We currently handle law, fire, and medical calls for the cities of Redding and Shasta Lake, as well as the entire unincorporated area of Shasta County, which comprises another 17 communities and rural areas. We were established in 1992. As a consolidated dispatch center, we are able to offer numerous service improvements over a single agency PSAP, including reduction of citizen transfers, resource management during critical incidents, speedier call processing and dispatching, and a deeper pool for staffing. Single agency PSAPs are struggling with these issues, as we all know, especially in this lengthy, never-ending, it seems, economic crisis. In mid-2011, the remaining local PSAP in my county, the city of Anderson Police Department, began considering disbanding their agency, their agency-specific PSAP, and rejoining the SHASCOM consolidation. This was due to their ongoing difficulty with recruiting and retaining dispatchers. Now, in 2010, the year before, APD had proceeded with a scheduled CPE upgrade. They purchased telephone equipment and a new recorder. This equipment was critically needed at that time. In fact, the recorder had been down for weeks. They had no recorder. APD did have residual funds of over $44,000. They plan to use their residual funds as allowed for headsets, new ergonomic dispatch furniture, and ergonomic chairs. Due to the staffing issues in their center, they delayed any more purchases, which I think was the moral thing to do. until their status as a PSAP was decided. Their spending plan as of February 18, 2011, listed those purchases as to be determined. They weren't sure whether they should do that at this time. Anderson has now formally rejoined SHASCOM as of last week. It will be a tiered transition with full implementation projected for summer, probably June of this year. We will need one additional console instead of the 2 that were approved for Anderson. Other expenses will be reduced, as is often the case with consolidation, but there are associated expenses with the move. SHASCOM would like to use a portion of that allotment to facilitate this consolidation. There is precedent for this use. APD and SHASCOM have shared in the past our GIS funding, as we also share a CAD system. This was approved by State 911. I believe that expecting the cost for consolidation to be borne solely by local government will only discourage or prevent consolidations. PSAP consolidation has been highly encouraged by State 911 office for many years. In addition, this advisory board has published guidelines that support and encourage consolidations for citizen and officer safety. We are not asking for new funding. We are asking to use existing and approved funding for the approved use. The interim Anderson Police Chief, the Reading Police Chief, the Reading Fire Chief, and the Shasta County Sheriff have all sent Deputy Director Doolin letters in strong support of this request and of the consolidation. So perhaps what I'm asking for is an agenda item for the next meeting.
So I'd like to mention that if you do have a question regarding your current funding, your first line is to go through the 911 division office. The nature of this board is to actually to address appeals only upon denials. So
Yeah, we did get Anderson and SHASCOM did get a letter, an email from Kyle Pease denying this request.
And then and there is a process in place for the appeal of that. Have you filed that appeal with the office yet?
No. We have written appeal letters. The various chiefs have written the appeal letters.
Yeah, we're not trying to put you through a hoop jump here, but as one of the original members on this panel, we want to make sure we stick with the same processes that we've used from the beginning. And so the process is, if you have received a total denial or partial denial of that, is to send that letter to the office, to Ryan, requesting a formal appeal. And then statutorily, we have to hear that appeal within a certain time frame and sit and hear that. But for us to set it as an oral request here, the process is written in the policy as to what we're to follow, and we'll gladly hear that if it's needed at that time.
And you can write, you're supposed to write your appeal to the office, and then you can copy any of the board members on it. It's, it's public information, but we can't take action on it until, I forget what the timeline is now, but it's all in the board governance, and that is posted on the website.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that will conclude our public comment section. So we will now be addressing the closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126-18C. Review of the detailed information on outages. Do I have a motion for the closed session?
Move to closed session.
Second.
I'd like to call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. At this time, I'd like to ask the public to leave the room for approximately 10 to 15 minutes during this closed session. Paul Dumais. Paul, would you please raise your hand? We'll let you know when the session is ready to resume. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Ryan Doolin will provide information on the closed session on outages.
Sorry, so I'd like to report on the outages for December of 2011 through February of 2012. We had a total of 123 outages reported during that time period. No routine trends were identified during the reporting period, with most common outages attributed to alley failures, PSAP equipment issues, and community isolations. That concludes my report.
Board have any comments regarding that? All right, well, that
Thank you.
concludes our order. Ryan, thank you very much. That concludes our order of business. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Bonner, second.
Thank you. Vote? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.